very bothering us, and they pose a very immediate danger of continuation of supply with mercenaries to Gaddafi regime. I mean, when we receive information from Al-Baida and from Benghazi, they captured so many of those mercenaries, and they came from different countries, from Chad and from Sudan, from Nigeria, from Zimbabwe, from many countries. And this has been to stop immediately, stopped through the pressure of the international community on those countries, and for the no-fly zone, not allowing any plane to be flying over Libya until we get rid of Gaddafi. Now, I would like to emphasize, when we talk about sanctions, we should be very careful that those sanctions will be against Gaddafi and his family, his subordinates, and not against the Libyan people. We should not repeat the mistakes which we done during the blockade of after Lockerbie, when Libyan people got suffered, and Gaddafi and his subordinates
are certainly
didn't.
moving very fast in Libya, and it will be very interesting to see how all of this does play out. But we are unfortunately out of time. I want to thank all three of our guests for taking part: Jeremy Keenan in London, Ahmed Attiga in Amman, and Ibrahim Sahad in Washington. Gentlemen, many thanks for your time. That's it for this edition of Inside Story. Thanks for watching. Remember, you can email us with your comments and suggestions. Just send them to insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye for now.
If you're a Nokia user, you can download Al Jazeera's news widget from Nokia's Ovis store. The news widget, available on compatible Nokia devices, gives users quick and easy access to real-time news updates from Al Jazeera English. See the world in real time. Al Jazeera Mobile.
East Timor's government has declared it's time for foreign forces to leave the country. But with a frail infrastructure, is this nation prepared to face a future without international support? 101 East, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Unpopular with some at home, untested overseas. The first year has not been easy for David Cameron and his coalition government. In conjunction with U2, Al Jazeera asks your questions to the British Prime Minister. World View, an interview with David Cameron at this time on Al Jazeera.
The times change. The instruments evolve. The battlegrounds shift.
This is America! Our country!
But the international struggle continues.
He was murdered!
Uncompromising, hard-hitting investigations.
I can't get no justice from no one in Jamaica.
People and power, at this time on Al Jazeera.
March on Al Jazeera. In 2009, Al Jazeera visited the cities worst affected by the financial downturn. Now, 2 years later, we return as European leaders discuss the debt crisis.
In a new 8-part series, Al Jazeera looks at women's rights and maternal health. Real women and their personal stories.
It's 20 years since the Arab League held its annual summit in Iraq. An Al Jazeera News special has full coverage from Baghdad.
Branded a lunatic by some and an inspirational revolutionary by others, Al Jazeera follows the controversial Norman Finkelstein.
Taking the fight to his own people, the embattled Libyan leader appeals to his supporters as his son appeals to the West.
I personally, I urge the Europeans to send fact-finding mission to Libya as soon as possible, because we are not afraid of facts.
Hello, I'm Anand Naidu in Doha. This is Al Jazeera. In the next 30 minutes, we'll have the very latest from Libya, where the uprising against Muammar Gaddafi continues. As does the crackdown on protesters calling for him to stand down. Pressure is also mounting from outside Libya.
The violence must stop. Those responsible for so brutally shedding the blood of innocents must be punished.
The United Nations joins the United States, NATO, and even some of Gaddafi's own men in calling for the violence to stop. Plus, getting out, a US-chartered ferry carrying 300 people finds sanctuary on the Mediterranean island of Malta. We begin with the fast-moving developments in Libya. Internal and international pressure is mounting on Muammar Gaddafi to stand down after 42 years in power. As the protests continued for an 8th day, the Libyan leader himself turned up at a pro-government rally in the capital, Tripoli, defiant as ever, promising to fight to defend his position. Defiance, too, from the demonstrators, some of whom faced another violent crackdown, and there are reports of yet more deaths. All this prompting an impassioned plea at the United Nations by the Libyan ambassador there for the killing to stop, an appeal echoed by the UN chief himself. NATO and the United States have said they'll slap arms embargoes, travel bans and sanctions on Gaddafi's government, which continues to shrink. More of his own diplomats now say they no longer speak for the colonel and are siding with the protesters. In the past hour, Gaddafi's son, Saif, has called on the European Union to send a fact-finding team to Libya. In a moment, we'll hear from our correspondent inside Libya, who we're not naming for her own safety. But first, Nadim Baba has this report.
Denouncing the man whose forces they ran out of town. In Libya's eastern city of Benghazi, calls for Muammar al-Gaddafi to be brought to justice.
We do not want him to flee to another country. We want to punish him because he shed Libyan blood. He killed our young people.
Earlier on in the capital Tripoli, there were violent scenes as security forces loyal to Gaddafi fired on protesters. Several people were reportedly killed. Following Friday prayers, pro-democracy demonstrators had converged on the capital from towns all around. After claiming protesters across the country are influenced by both al-Qaeda and hallucinogenic drugs, Libya's leader appeared in front of supporters in Green Square, insisting the population was behind him.
The Libyan people, if I'm not loved by my people, I don't deserve to live. If my people, the Arab and African peoples, and all peoples do not love Muammar al-Gaddafi does not deserve to live only for one day.
How much of this he believes is anyone's guess. Despite these pictures, Gaddafi officials admit large parts of Libya are now controlled by his opponents. But his son is now on a media offensive, telling invited journalists that Libya's armed forces have not attacked peaceful protesters.
Personally, I urge the Europeans to send fact-finding mission to Libya as soon as possible, because we are not afraid of facts. We are worried about rumors and lies, because facts are on our side.
All the while, the violence claims more victims. One protester sheltering with some of the injured in Tripoli described the scene to Al Jazeera.
Gunfiring is still heavily heard around us, and as I said, we are taking refuge with people we don't know and they don't know us. Other people are taken detained alive at gunpoint. Also hear the gunfiring and shooting around me. It is very heavy and intense.
Those who want Gaddafi gone may be feeling emboldened, but for now it seems he's digging in his heels. Nadim Baba, Al Jazeera.
As soon as the Friday prayer ended, the banners were pulled out and the protest began. On the grounds of the mosque where several companions of the Prophet Muhammad are believed to be buried. And now they have been joined by 11 victims who died on February 17th, the fallen of this uprising. It's in their name that the demonstrations are continuing. The people want the fall of the regime, the same slogan that swept Tunisia and Egypt, now echoed across eastern Libya. And the same demands: basic rights, freedom and dignity. The pressure continuing to end 40 years of authoritarian rule by a leader they don't seem to be afraid of anymore. They can count on strong support from the army. Here, local commanders announcing that they are on the side of this popular revolt. The Libyan leader has more than once depicted protesters as drug addicts or supporters of Al-Qaeda. Gaddafi named Abdel Hakim al-Hassadi as the local leader of the group. In an exclusive interview to AlJazeera, he denies these allegations.
When the uprising started and I saw there was an opportunity to change the regime, I decided to join. We have no further aims of establishing an Islamic emirate or anything else, but this is an excuse to scare people off.
In a separate demonstration, women are making their voices heard as well. They want a free Libya where their husbands, sons and fathers are safe.
Today, Libya is free. Today, Libya is free, and for all. I told him just one word: don't go out. Stay. We're gonna bring you and kill you as you killed our people. But there's no comeback. No comeback. Thank you.
For many protesters, this is the first time they dare to speak up. But it's certainly not the last one, for the sake of future generations.
Meanwhile, Muammar Gaddafi is losing support from members of his own administration. The ambassador to the United Nations has spoken out in defense of pro-democracy demonstrators.
They are asking for democracy, they are asking for progress, they are asking for freedom, they are asking for their rights. They demonstrated peacefully, they didn't throw a single stone. They were killed. What did Brother Muammar Gaddafi say? He said that these people use these hallucination tablets. Tens of thousands would need mountains of these pills to lose their brains and minds and act. 1 million turned out in Benghazi yesterday. The green mountain a mountain of tablets that the colonel claims would not be